everybody. Welcome back to Scotland at 7. It's the 6th of May, and of course, it's polling day today. And joining me to review today's news is our stalwart, what would you say, Chris? Scotland at 7 star, Chris McCusker from the SNP's Socialist Group. Welcome back, Chris.
Good evening, Graham. Gordon, I would just rather go with Raving Socialist. That will
Raving Socialist. Okay, we'll write that into the next introduction, Chris. Okay, let's get on with the show. We're a bit late this evening. Apologies for some technical issues earlier on today. Now, first of all, the coronavirus update, and as of 2 o'clock today, a total of 1,934,643 people in Scotland have now been tested through NHS Scotland labs and the UK government's regional testing centres since the beginning of the pandemic. Now, of these, 1,707,631 have been confirmed negative. 227,012 have tested positive. There are 283 new cases of COVID-19 confirmed by a test, although not everyone with the virus will display the symptoms, and of course not all of those with symptoms will be tested. Today's new case figures include test results that were delayed by issues affecting data from the UK government testing sites yesterday. There are no new reported deaths of people who have tested positive. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus COVID-19 infection now stands at 7,660. This number only includes those who have died having received a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. Of the people who have tested positive, 58 were in hospital last night, 11 of whom were in intensive care. As of 8 o'clock this morning, 2,860,635 people have now received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination, and 400,296 had received their second dose. The latest UK daily figures show that 127,583 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, an increase of 13 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings and not just in hospitals. And now to tonight's main stories. And of course, polling stations are open and people all across Scotland are voting as the polls close at 10 p.m. The elections in Holyrood have begun and people all across the country have been voting since 7 a.m. this morning. If you haven't cast your vote in yet, here is a reminder that the polls are open until 10 p.m. tonight. Voters in Wales are also going to the polls to elect 60 members to the Welsh Senedd. And across England and Wales, there are also local and mayoral elections. If there is a majority in Westminster parliamentary by-election in Hartlepool following the resignation, a big part of there is to be a by-election following the resignation of a sitting Labour MP, Mike Hill. In Glasgow today, when the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, was confronted by Jada Franson at a polling station, the First Minister did not hold back. As she told Ms Franson, "You are a fascist, you are a racist, and the south side of Glasgow will reject you." Chris, I don't know if you've happened to have seen the clip of the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, out in the streets today and this confrontation. Did you happen to see this?
Yeah, I did, and wonderfully put down by our First Minister. Absolutely fantastic. And you know, she's 100% correct. Fascists and racists have got no place in Scotland whatsoever. You know, I look forward to Jayden losing her deposit.
Can you enlighten us, because many people may not know who Jada Franson actually is and what party or what she represents. Do you know much about her?
Ex-BNP, Oi for England, links to Tommy Robinson. I can't even remember what his other pseudonym is. Various links to the Brexit Party, the EDL, and all the rest of it. You know, just an absolute bunch of nut jobs and a complete freak show. You know, and I would be amazed. I would be absolutely, utterly amazed if she managed to get anybody to vote for her.
You think, Chris, that maybe Ms Franson's efforts today are not really so much about getting herself elected or even getting any votes, but just simply getting herself onto the television screens and making her message, however unpleasant it might be, heard?
Well, it could well be, you know, that people with megalomania personality that would like to sort of like seek their 15 minutes of Andy Warhol time. That I mean, it's actually bizarre that she actually came up north of the border, shall we say, in order to stand in such a constituency with a high level of Asian and BAME families living in that community. So I find it really absurd, very, very bizarre.
So you think this is maybe just attention seeking, that Miss Franson is really just here to cause a confrontation and to upset people?
Yeah. I mean, again, I mean, words fail me, but then, words fail me about George Galloway. Words fail me about, any sort of like, I mean, even there's some party, the Family Party or something like that.
Yes, I've heard of them.
This election, there seems to be about.
Okay, well, Chris, because of the elections, of course, we're not really allowed to talk too much about political parties at the moment because obviously people are voting today. We're not allowed to influence that. So perhaps we should maybe move on to our second story this evening, Chris. And this time... Chris, I've just been reminded of something you said earlier on today about this election in Hartlepool, a by-election caused by a Labour MP resigning.
Aye. It's curious, that one. Again, for all sorts of reasons, you've got Boris Johnson hanging around Hartlepool, probably about as welcome as a fart in a spacesuit, but that's neither here nor there. But it's interesting to see if Keir Starmer's going to actually be able to hold that seat, because again, that's one of the key seats in the old red wall, and I can't countenance Labour losing that seat to, I mean, when you consider the amount of sleaze and scandal that, is embedded in the Tory party, it really, really begs a question as to, if Labour don't hold that seat, what the hell are Labour really doing wrong? I mean, with all the, as I say, the sleaze and the scandal, again, we'll probably, talk about Brexit and the Port of Jersey later on.
Yeah, we will do, Chris.
The whole sideshow of the Tories, you would think that, Labour would be flying high in the polls, but, apparently Keir Starmer's polling worse than Jeremy Corbyn. And, as an ex-Labour voter, I just really, really struggle to understand it.
Do you think perhaps, Chris, that Keir Starmer comes over as far too middle of the road, or even slightly right of centre for a Labour politician? Obviously, he replaced Corbyn, who was very much further to the left, very much a traditional socialist, wasn't he? And of course, he was the choice of a lot of young Labour supporters. Is this, do you think, showing up now that people who would traditionally have voted for Labour are being put off by Mr. Starmer?
100%. I mean, I couldn't honestly, I couldn't see Keir Starmer turning up at Glastonbury and talking to the age demographic of 18 to 30. I just don't see Keir Starmer doing that. I seen there was a video out on Twitter the other day there. And it was someone from the BBC or somebody from Sky, and they just Keir Starmer was standing talking to some folk, and a passerby went by, and the reporter stopped the passerby and said, do you know who that man is? And the passerby was, no, haven't got a clue. And and she's like, well, that's Sir Keir Starmer, and she replied, who? he just doesn't have it. He just doesn't have it. And again, you're right. He is centre right. And how a party that's supposed to represent the workers can have a sir thing at the head of that party just beggars belief. But then again, you could go down the road of the fact that I firmly believe as a socialist, no party should be putting their MPs out to pasture in the unelected Houses of Lords. But there we go.
Chris, I was going to ask you, do you think there's perhaps a parallel here a little bit between what's happened between Jeremy Corbyn and Mr. Starmer with the way a politician like Tony Benn, for example, handled this issue of honours and how I mean, there was a man, Tony Benn, who threw all that up, didn't he?
Well, yeah, Tony Benn's definitely someone that I would look up to, politics wise. Even you can go as far back as Anthony Eden and stuff like that. The core principle of Labour should be to be representative of the working classes, and I fail to see how a knight of the realm can be representative of the working class.
Indeed.
It's just bizarre. It's a complete oxymoron. I mean, don't get me wrong. Jeremy Corbyn was no angel. I've said time and time again. He was all for a free Palestine and a unified Ireland, but not an independent Scotland. That's where he fell down for me. But his core socialist values, constantly shone through. But again, I think the timing wasn't right for Jeremy Corbyn. I think if Jeremy Corbyn had been a bit earlier, then we might not have had Keir Starmer. But in saying that, Labour fantastically, unfortunately, had the best leader that was never the Prime Minister, and that was our own John Smith.
Okay. Well, Chris, let's move on to our next story this evening. Of course, this is a story about UK patrol vessels who are off the coast of Jersey as French fishing boats have ended a protest. French fishing boats have ended a 6-hour protest at St Heliers Harbour in a dispute over post-Brexit fishing rules. Boris Johnson had sent 2 Royal Navy patrol vessels to the waters around Jersey in a throwback to the days of gunboat diplomacy. The French vessels are protesting over new licences issued on Friday that restrict the number of days that they can operate in the shared waters for the first time. The French protest centres on the restrictions on access to fishing equipment imposed by the Jersey government on Friday. Cyril Perrault, a fisherman who was part of the delegation, said they're putting the blame on the French government, who they say did not provide them with the right information. Around 4:30 a.m, 60 French vessels amassed off the coast of St Helier, with HMS Severn and HMS Tamar observing from a mile away as they arrived at the harbour at 7 a.m. The armed patrol vessels were sent to monitor the situation, but the decision to send in the Royal Navy has been criticised as heavy-handed overreaction. Several Jersey fishermen joined the protest, including Chris Lemazure, the owner of the Jersey Oyster Company, who described conditions placed on the new post-Brexit fishing licences issued to Breton and Normandy boats as insulting and discriminatory. France's EU Affairs Minister Clement Beaune has warned that it would defend fishing rights and said that France will not be intimidated by these manoeuvres. The European Commission has said in a statement that the conditions imposed on fishing licences in the Channel Islands waters were a breach of the trade agreement struck on Christmas Eve. So, Chris, there seems to be an enormous amount of confusion here over what these new fishing licences are actually imposing on the French boats. French fishermen are claiming that they're going to lose out. They're not going to have the protected rights to these waters as agreed in the Christmas deal that was done between the EU and the UK.
I'm not surprised, Gordon. I'm really, really not surprised. The whole idea of Brexit, according to Nigel Farage, was to cut down on red tape and EU bureaucracy. And now we're getting more red tape from Britain and more bureaucracy from Britain. You've got Jacob Rees-Mogg standing up in the Houses of Commons, claiming that the fish are British and they're happy to be British fish and all the rest of that mince, absolute mince. It really is bizarre. And what I found today was it was a real strange story to be sprung. I literally got it half an hour before 7 o'clock, before the polling stations opened.
Yeah.
So I was really wondering, was this, manufactured in order to come out this morning?
I think it might have been a distraction, Chris, some kind of dead cat story, as they call it.
Yeah, I mean, there is nothing really happening in English politics with the exception of what we just talked about, the Hartlepool by-election. But again, it just seemed to me a really, really bizarre story to come out with. When the majority of the country are, going around the polling stations.
So, it does seem to be very bizarre timing. Of course, Boris Johnson recently has been mired in a series of scandals and basically stories of sleaze, cronyism, nepotism, you name it, anything that ends with ism, Boris Johnson seems to have had it, have been accused of it. So this might be, and you could be right, Chris, perhaps this has been timed specifically to try and draw attention away from that. But it does seem to be, forgive the term, a storm in a teacup, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, it certainly does. But I am 100% with France. I firmly believe that they should, if you pardon the expression, stick to their guns. We were told that there would be no changes to, apart from the fish becoming British. Apparently they all got British blue passports and stuff like that.
Right.
So they were all reclaimed as British fish. But quintessentially, nothing would really change, except for the fact that Britain could fish, any time of the day, 7 days a week, and what was that famous Beatles song, 8 days a week. So, and it seems to be that the whole Brexit debacle has been mired, as I say, in red tape and complete bureaucracy. We had it was only last week or maybe the week before. There was a stushy about Norway and the fishing rights of the Norwegian trawlers and stuff like that. So it was something. That people have to realise the fact that Nigel Farage, the guy that was in the middle of the Thames shouting off his mouth at Bob Geldof and throwing fish into the water. I think he only went to one fishing meeting in the EU in his
time as an MEP. Yeah.
As an MEP. So, I'll take no lectures from, the likes of Nigel Farage on fishing rights.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what happens next. My understanding, Chris, was that part of the Christmas agreement between the EU and the UK was that fishing rights for French boats were to remain exactly as they were. And according to the local government on Jersey, they're saying that they still have the right to fish in the waters, but what they've done is they've changed the times that they can fish and the kind of nets they can use. And this was not apparently something which was in the agreement.
Yeah, and I was also led to believe that the status quo would remain until 2023, and that is straight from the fish's mouth. Our own Douglas Ross. So I mean, nothing was going to change until 2023. and you know they were going to be outside the CFP by 2023. That was it. That was their Valhalla. And you know, so quite clearly it is the British government changing the goalposts.
Well, this is what, this is exactly what French fishermen have been saying, Chris. And of course, the French energy minister was even threatening to cut off the electricity supply from EDF Energy in France to the islands.
I heard that as well, Gordon. Yeah.
So there's been a lot of threats.
And, yeah, but you know, I mean, the thing about France though is the fact that, you know, they're not all bluff and bluster.
No, they tend to go straight to the point.
They actually do. Yeah. I mean, if you remember the French farmers, you know, I mean, they have no qualms in just emptying their tractors right on, you know, the council office doors. Exactly, and stuff like that, you know, full of manure, whatnot, what have you. The French fishermen are fiercely passionate about their jobs and stuff like that. They're passionate about, obviously, their trade, and you know, and I've got to laugh. I lived in England for 10, 12, 13 years. And, you know, a fish supper down in England does not taste the same as a fish supper in Scotland, I can tell you.
I'll have to take your word for that, Chris. I can't confirm that. Anyway, let's move on now to Ireland. And Ireland is to oppose a UK ban on the prosecution of veterans who served in Northern Ireland. The Irish government has urged the UK not to give immunity from prosecution to former soldiers who served in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. The new UK legislation, which bans prosecution of veterans who served in Northern Ireland under new legislation. The Deputy Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar, said that Ireland was deeply alarmed and would not support such a move. A murder trial of 2 British ex-soldiers accused of shooting dead an Irish Republican Army commander collapsed this week. A separate trial of a soldier accused of murdering 13 unarmed Catholic civil rights marchers in Londonderry in 1972, when British paratroopers opened fire on Bloody Sunday, is actually still ongoing. Now, with tensions running high, Chris, at the moment because of Brexit, because of the strains along the border between the Irish Republic and the north of Ireland, this has added fuel to the fire, hasn't it? Because the British government is now taking the view that whatever people did as soldiers back in 1972 cannot now be examined in retrospect. It's like they've applied some kind of statute of limitations. Now, this, I also think, was not ever agreed with the Republic, was it?
No, it wasn't. It was clearly laid out in the Good Friday Agreement. And therefore it was ratified. So for the British government to change its tune now, you know, again, just it just speaks volumes of you know what I think of the British government. You know, that high-handed. They really don't give a toss about anybody bar themselves, and it's that. The epitome of British exceptionalism to say that you know if you carry out your orders and you know you commit atrocities, you know there'll be no comeback.
Yeah,
but I mean, what also gets me as well, because James O'Brien covered this the other day, and I found
the radio talk show host, Chris.
Yeah, and you know the army, the British Army were supposed to operate a thing called a yellow card system in Ireland. All the squaddies carried their yellow card. And you know there was limitations, and if they overstepped those limitations, the yellow card would come in and they would get pulled in and whatnot, what have you. Obviously, that system wasn't working on the Bloody Sunday.
Yeah.
But then you know people have not been brought to account for the actions of the paratroop regiment that was deployed on the ground on that day.
Chris, can I stop you just for a moment and interject for a second? One of the things that occurs to me about this is like this issue with the fishing rights in the English Channel and a lot of other things that have happened since Brexit. Do you think there's a pattern here developing that now Brexit has happened and Britain finds itself outside of the European Union? It feels it can just simply tear up these agreements that it's signed and do whatever it likes.
Well, I mean, that's why I said British exceptionalism, because it seems to me that the way that Boris Johnson wants to act, or the way his government wants to act, is with carte blanche and complete impunity. Now that we've drawn, drew back the drawbridge and stuff like that, from Europe, that I mean, we can basically make our own laws. And when you look into an awful lot of things, especially with the Good Friday Agreement, you're actually looking into an awful lot of humanitarian law that was put into that act as well, and it's something that you just cannot dick about with.
Chris, I heard a report on another news channel on YouTube. It was a social media channel. They were talking about a British suggestion about how to solve the problem of the border between the European Union being along the Irish Sea coast, between Britain and Northern Ireland. And this suggestion was that Southern Ireland, that the Republic of Ireland, should be thrown out of the EU, so that there didn't need to be a border across Ireland. That was actually put forward as a serious suggestion by British negotiators.
They've got no right in order to take that stance. I mean, I've got sympathies, I've got my loyalties and stuff like that to Ireland, and what I don't like is that constantly, when they refer to the IRA, this might be controversial, I don't know, but...
Well, let's be careful here, Chris.
Well, no. I mean, all it is basically the fact that, people often refer to the IRA as terrorists, but the people that actually signed up willingly to the Irish Republican Army done so, in the full belief that they were soldiers. So they were soldiers basically defending their land.
Okay.
We could go down the road of bombs in Manchester and bombs in Brighton and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong. A lot of bad things happened on both sides, but by the end of the day,
the Good Friday Agreement came along, Chris.
You can't get away from those words. It's Irish Republican Army. That's what it stands for. It's an army.
Okay.
If you enlist, if somebody enlists you to serve in an army, you're a soldier.
All right, Chris. Well, that is obviously your opinion, and I'm not going to offer a comment on it, but I would like to move on, Chris, if we can, to our next story, which is about Twitter. And Twitter has launched a prompt asking users to rethink abusive tweets. From today, Twitter is rolling out a new prompt to users who are about to send a tweet that its algorithms believe could be harmful or offensive. Those who try to send such a message will be asked if they want to review this before tweeting, with the options to edit, delete, or send it anyway. The feature, coming first to iPhones and later to Android devices, has been tested in the last year, and the social network says it has meaningfully reduced the volume of abuse. Unlike many experiments in AI moderation, Twitter can afford to err on the side of caution, since the penalties for guessing wrong are simple pop-up rather than censorship, account bans, or worse. So what do you make of this, Chris? Do you think this would be an effective tool in just getting people to think twice before they post something?
Well, again, it's quite funny that this story comes out today when earlier on I heard that the Twitter ban has been upheld on Donald Trump and also his Facebook ban as well.
I think it's indefinite, Chris, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think Twitter's was indefinite, and I think Facebook's was an ongoing thing or something like that. There's a big fallout between Trump and
Yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg, but yeah, look, if it's going to make social media a wee bit more, uh, how can we say, a wee bit more
Civilized?
easygoing, a wee bit more forgiving,
Yeah.
then fine. I would take exception if that some of the things in an algorithm get sort of like flagged up, and it's not typed in that
Yeah.
fashion, then I can see the pitfalls. But by the end of the day, the vast majority of people are calling for tighter controls on social media platforms, which is quite right. I mean, last weekend we seen the English and Scottish football associations actually operating a weekend ban on social media
Interesting.
to stand up to racism and stuff like that. So,
Well,
it has to be a good thing.
well, you never know, Chris. Maybe it will work. Let's hope it has some effect. I know a lot of moderators and admins on various online sites must be pretty sick of having to weed out all the profanity and all the abuse and the swear words just to try and get a more civilized conversation going.
Well, I mean, it can take a wee bit of your time, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm a moderator on quite a few Facebook groups, and obviously the SNP Socialists, and more. I actually find it uh, more to a fever pitch with one particular page that I moderate on for
Uh-huh.
my good friend Hardeep Singh Kohli. So you get some right loonies on that page. I think you're on it actually, Gordon.
Am I?
But I
Right.
no, I'm not out you or anything like that, mate. But yeah, again, I find it bizarre because the amount of time that I've been on Twitter, I've never had a ban since I joined it, and
Me,
yet
me neither, Chris.
and weekly I come across people saying, "Oh, I was given a 72-hour ban because I said the word,
Something or other, yeah.
whatever and stuff like that." Yeah, and but it can. You can see how open to abuse that it is. So, as I say, if the controls work and it makes it a wee bit more user friendly, then it has to be a good thing.
Okay, Chris. Well, let's move on now. And the next story comes from Germany. And Germany is to bring forward climate goals after a constitutional court ruling. Germany's government is to revise its emission reduction targets after the country's constitutional court declared the current goal of aiming to become greenhouse gas neutral by 2045 rather than 2050 as insufficient. The Finance Minister Olaf Scholz and the Environment Minister Svenja Schulz laid out a legislative proposal on Wednesday to cut emissions by 65% from 1990 levels by 2030. An 88% reduction of carbon emissions is to be reached by 2040. Germany's emission levels are currently 40% lower than they were in 1990, meaning that we require a further reduction of 25% over the next 9 years to meet its next target. The German cabinet could ratify the proposal from the Social Democrat ministers next week if, as expected, it finds support amongst its senior coalition partners, Angela Merkel's Christian Democratic Union. So, Chris, Germany seems to be really rocketing ahead when it comes to reducing its greenhouse gas emissions, and for them to actually start to tighten it even more. Do you think that is telling us something about how the German government and its experts have reassessed the threat of climate change, and perhaps are now thinking that they have to move a lot faster?
Definitely, the speed that Scotland is going at is heartening, but it's not anywhere near fast enough as far as I'm concerned. You've often heard me advocating for the reintroduction of trams into Glasgow and Aberdeen and all the
Indeed.
rest of it. It's the most greenest mode of transport. And probably like yourself, I've been in Prague and Poland, and the tram systems there, very much the same as Berlin. They're all operated with, electricity. I just find it a complete no-brainer as to reintroduce these systems. I mean, I made the argument.
Chris, I was going to say to you, I know that you're very keen on trams. There is another option which is being discussed as well, which is the idea of electric buses, like the trolley buses, which Glasgow experimented with in the 60s, but this time without the cables, but instead having batteries. Electric buses are already being ramped up, aren't they, by the SNP government, the production of them?
Yeah, and this is something that I was just about to go on to talk about.
Sorry, Chris, I preempted you.
The actual trolley buses. Because I mean, when you look at Glasgow's architecture, you can still see on the walls of the tenements. You can see the connection points.
Yeah, big iron rings. Yeah.
And it was basically it just operated in a zigzag, from sort of like wall to wall, for the trolley buses to go down. So, I mean, even if you were using the likes of, going back to trolley buses, you wouldn't be interfering with the infrastructure insofar as you don't need any track or anything like that. They all had rubber tires and whatnot, what have you.
Yeah.
So anything that is going to, invest in green energy has to be welcomed. And I mean, they were talking about that our CO2 emissions have vastly reduced, obviously because of COVID. The actual car volume within Glasgow city centre has reduced massively. And that's all very fair and well, but that's only for a limited period of time. The actual.
Chris, do you not think Chris, do you not think it actually shows that when a country wants to do something or is forced to do something in the way we were with COVID, it's perfectly feasible to find other ways of doing things rather than pouring diesel smoke all the way up Hope Street?
Well, again, I'll go at the risk of being controversial and saying there has to be a political will in order to do it.
Yep.
And this is where I feel that consensual politics within Holyrood, especially between the SNP and the Greens on this green issue, but with constructive working from the Labour Party, because you're not going to get it for the Tories, very rarely do you get it from the Lib Dems. But if we have a constructive, meaningful way forward, whilst we're rebuilding the country, as Nicola said, rebuilding out of COVID, Nicola has proved time and time again that obviously a woman, more than able to multitask, more than able to do 6 jobs at the one time, plus concentrate on COVID.
Chris,
it's perfectly feasible to do.
Chris, that's terrific. Unfortunately, Chris, we have to steer away from Scottish politics because of what day this is. So I'm sorry, I have to stop you on your interesting conversation about the First Minister for the time being, Chris. Apologies for that. I'd like to move on to a European story now. The European Union is apparently ready to discuss COVID vaccine patent waiver, according to von der Leyen. The European Union is willing to discuss a proposal to waive intellectual property rights for COVID-19 vaccines, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said today, as drug makers fought their ground. US President Joe Biden yesterday voiced his support for a waiver in the reversal of the UK position. And his top trade negotiator, Catherine Tai, swiftly endorsed the negotiations at the World Trade Organization. The WHO chief, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, reached for capital letters in a tweet calling Biden's move a monumental moment in the fight against COVID-19 and said that it had reflected the wisdom and moral leadership of the United States. Van der Leyen, speaking to the European University Institute in Florence, said that the EU was ready to discuss any proposals that address the crisis in an effective and pragmatic manner. Chris, this obviously shows a very different approach from President Biden and his team from the kind of, I say, the kind of position that President Trump would have taken over this. Here is Biden actually going against the drug manufacturing companies in his own country in order to help to promote the cure for the pandemic in more countries more quickly.
Yeah, yeah. It's to me, it's a case of Biden has to go hard and fast in his first 2 years, because after the first 2 years, it's my understanding that he may lose the support in the Senate, and they might push back on an awful lot of his left-wing ideas. So you do see that Biden's trying to do everything once, all at the same time, and obviously it's his reasoning that it's going to be beneficial first. He actually used a very, very clever bit of PR. He stole it off of Trump, and he basically said that that he is putting the United States of America first. So I mean that was obviously said to reach out to Trump supporters that are still licking their wounds.
Chris,
I
was just going to say, Chris, before we talk about Trump here, that Mr. Biden's what he's actually proposing is that the drug companies in the United States who are manufacturing the vaccines and selling them for profit should, in actual fact, allow them to be manufactured in Europe and other countries, perhaps under license or under supervision. But the American drug companies are pushing back against this. They're saying that the quality of the drugs would be at risk, the safety of them would be at risk. Do you think that's really true?
No, I don't think it is true. I think it's just the fact that they want to control the monopoly and of big pharma. America has had to my mind anyway, America's had the control over the big pharma cartel, if you want to call it like that. Because it is seen as big business. America controls Silicon Valley, and anything that comes out of that, has to be treated in such a way where the everything is controlled by that one sort of like central hub. So if there is, say, the likes of laptops or software development being done in Munich or somewhere like that, there's kind of like 60 guys all sort of like go from Silicon Valley in order to oversee it. Chris, so I think they like to keep a tight control on things.
Well, what I was going to say next, Chris, is that obviously American drug companies have had to work hard to develop these vaccines, and they've spent money investing in that research and then into the production of these drugs. But it's fair to say that in the United Kingdom, at least, the AstraZeneca vaccine, the so-called Oxford vaccine, was in fact developed pretty much at cost, because if we compare the cost of the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is, I understand, is about £3 a go, with something like, I think, was it Pfizer? I can't remember, but one of the American drugs was as much as £30 a shot. There's a huge difference there. They are taking an enormous profit, aren't they?
It's a huge profit, but America is like that. And I was talking to a friend the other day there, and I don't know the figures, but I just made the off the cuff comment about my elder brother who lives in Melbourne. He was telling me the other day there that a loaf of bread costs £4.50. But the average sort of like hourly wage over there is $22.50. So you've as it's the whole yin yang thing. And in America, obviously, they've got a different health care system where it's,
Do you
obviously
think,
run for profit.
Chris, do you think
And
that,
people have got to pay in through insurance and stuff like
so
that.
you think it's just a completely different ethos? Americans are used to paying big bucks for their medical treatment, whereas in the United Kingdom we operate a system which is free at the point of need, and drugs are manufactured more or less and supplied at cost to the NHS so that it keeps the cost of medicines under control. I understand that the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccination and the people who created it at Oxford University do have an understanding with a similar institute in India. And they're hoping to license the production of that cheaper vaccine in India. I'm pretty certain that Biden would want to do that if he could.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, what we're seeing at the moment is the fact that they're up against the clock with regards India. Obviously, we were
Yeah.
discussing it last week. They actually need the vaccines kind of like yesterday.
And of course, India makes
Uh,
the
and
vaccines itself, doesn't it, Chris? It exports them all over the world.
but India exports before it actually sort of like
Yeah.
it's a really bizarre situation. I heard there was something like Britain had something like what was it 80,000 or something like that on order,
Yeah.
and people were asking why don't you just leave them there if you don't need them and give
Yeah.
them to the Indian people to use. Uh, you,
To give them some protection.
rather than taking them out of the country.
Mm.
And there's all again. You could go back to the Jaden story that we started with, and and people would say, "Oh, but we've got to look after British people first," and you get into some really, really
Yeah. I think it's fair to
murky,
say,
murky
Chris,
water.
that British people have been looked after first anyway. Britain massively over-ordered when it came to vaccines and have all kinds of different vaccines available. So there's plenty of
Yeah, yeah,
slack in the system, isn't there?
yeah, and I think the Scottish vaccine is yet to come into full production. I think that's supposedly the end of this month or the end of the following month.
So there's going to
It's
be
due
yet another
soon.
homegrown vaccine.
Yeah, yet another homegrown vaccine. So that. I mean, somebody said I can't remember who it was, whether it was Jason Leach or somebody like that, but someone said that COVID won't be over until the whole world has
It's
been
cured. Yeah,
vaccinated,
yeah.
basically.
And of course, that's
And
not happening.
I think if you look at it from that perspective, then I think that you're probably looking at it from the right angle. I mean, I heard stories again. Obviously, I take a great interest in the aviation industry.
Yep.
I heard stories today that Thompson's, EasyJet, and one other I can't remember, but the TUI group, they're actually offering customers, lateral flow tests along with their bookings for
Hmm.
an extra £20 or something like that. So that they can actually go with peace of mind and have a holiday, and know that all the costs are covered in the overall package that they're buying from them.
Chris, I was listening today. I think Radio Four carried an item where they were talking to an eminent virologist from the London Institute of Tropical Medicines, and what he was saying was quite alarming because he says or he claims that despite the fact that India has a measurable number of COVID cases, that the actual numbers of cases, both in India and in lots of other remote parts of the world, are completely unknown because most of these
Yeah,
countries cannot record them. They can't keep records of these things, and they don't have the fast communications as we have in order to keep track of who is infected and who is not. And also, they have no access to vaccines. So there is obviously a very strong argument, as you were putting it, Chris, I think, for the wealthy nations who are now vaccinating themselves to start, making offers to these other countries with vaccines at cost.
yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, Chris, we're going to move to what I think here is our final story this evening. This is an unusual story, but it's actually a couple of stories, I should say, from America. The Florida governor has signed a Republican-backed law imposing new curbs. The Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, signed a bill today imposing new limits on voting by mail and using ballot drop boxes, the latest Republican-backed voting restrictions to become law in a US election battleground state. The new law restricts the use of absentee ballot drop boxes to early voting period, adds new identification requirements for requesting such ballots, and requires voters to reapply for absentee ballots in each new general election cycle. Previously, Florida voters only had to apply once every 2 election cycles. The law also gives partisan election observers more power to raise objections and requires people offering voters assistance to stay at least 45 metres away from polling places, an increase from the previous 30-metre radius. Republican legislators in dozens of states have argued measures to restrict the voting rights in the aftermath of former President Donald Trump's false claims that the 2020 election was stolen from him through widespread voting fraud. Lawmakers in Texas House of Representatives were poised on Thursday to advance sweeping new voting limits despite opposition from numerous businesses. Democrats and voting rights advocates are seeking to oppose these voter suppression measures, saying that they are aimed at disenfranchising black and minority voters. So, Chris, this is still rumbling on. The legacy of Donald Trump's claims, his fictitious claims to have been ousted by fake votes or by a rigged election, seems to be rumbling on with his Republican supporters in various states.
I honestly think it will keep rumbling on as long as Donald Trump has got a stage. I mean, he's taken himself down to Florida and secured these bolt hole. But he still has a working PR department that keeps him in the news headlines. CNN and all these various
News,
American news channels, Fox News as well. So he is not going to go away, overnight. And again, harking back to what I was saying earlier about James O'Brien's show. There was one chap on there that was, he was basically saying that there are still Trump supporters out there that actually, will not concede the fact that Biden won the election. I mean, these people are wired to the moon.
Yeah.
And it's very much like the diaspora that we've got within the British Isles between the Union and independence and stuff like that.
Yep.
It has been inherent in American politics for as long. Where you've had the Union of the South and you had the Union and stuff like that, and they were fighting the South, and and whatnot, and what have you. So, I think it's always going to be that sort of like different sort of like people who with their different ideologies.
Okay, it certainly there's still a very strong seam of racism, isn't there, running through American politics. It's like an enormous chasm between left and right, with Joe Biden's Democrat Party on one side and the Republicans and presumably Donald Trump sulking on the other.
Well, yeah, as to my mind, it has always been that way. I mean, if you hark back to the wonderful film with Sidney Poitier,
Guess who's coming to dinner?
In the Heat of the Night. No. In the Heat of the Night, I was thinking about actually. See, when you actually understand the white-black racial issue there, it's actually not as racially charged as what you would like to think, because it's inbred in the actual sort of like town that thing with the God, I can't remember who played the policeman.
Well,
Who
I'm
played the
sorry, Chris.
policeman
I'm
in
at
it?
a loss. I have not seen the movie, so I
Oh,
understand what
Rod
you're saying.
Steiger.
Yeah,
Rod Steiger. There
Rod
you
Steiger.
go. Yeah, I mean, basically, it was just inbred in his mind. It was inbred in his mind and stuff like that. You know, it wasn't the fact that it was the audacity, the fact that Sidney Poitier's character was actually a policeman, let alone the fact he was black.
Well, times are changing, Chris, I think, and we have to hope that the American racist schism begins to heal over and people begin to stop picking on each other, and we see an end to the brutality that seems to be dished out to virtually any black person by
Yeah,
many
yeah.
rogue police, it seems.
Yeah, it's simply appalling. And what's happening, recently, the whole growth of the Black Lives Matter movement, is highlighting all this and stuff like that. So, and as long as you have that left and right sort of like pool within America, then, I think it's something that's going to keep on going, sadly.
Okay, well, listen, Chris, we're going to leave politics completely now for our last story and talk about trees. A giant sequoia found still smouldering after the 2020 California wildfire. Scientists have discovered a giant sequoia still smouldering in California's Sequoia National Forest months after wildfires tore through the region last August. The tree was found charred but still standing by researchers in the lower part of the national forest this week. While turning down a sharp switchback on the trail, a member of Sequoia's fire ecology and research team spotted a plume of smoke in the ravine below. Using a long camera lens, the team tracked the smoke to a single giant sequoia, standing in the burn area from last year's Castle Fire. The enormous tree, which has probably stood hundreds, if not thousands of years, looked like a chimney spouting smoke in the middle of the blackened forest. Chris, this is an absolutely incredible story, isn't it? A tree that caught fire last summer is actually still smouldering after all of this time. Quite incredible.
Yeah, quite fascinating. But I can actually go one better.
You
There's
can?
the my favourite adopted island of Lanzarote. You can still get your dinner cooked over the volcanic ash if you go up to Tiamafana mountain.
Wow.
And I think that's an absolute phenomenal thing. It's, that geothermic heat, which is ever present, on that island. I actually think that's should be one of the seven wonders of the world, actually. But there we go.
Well, one of the curious things about this story, Chris, and we don't have the complete story, but it doesn't actually mention what the scientists who were studying this area actually did. Did they put the tree out? We've no idea. It doesn't seem to mention that.
Well, I mean, it could be one of those ever burning woods or something like
Maybe it's
that.
smouldering
I think
inside, you mean?
yeah, yeah. Do you know, it's really funny because I mean earlier on I've mentioned in the heat of the night. It's actually reminded me of an episode of Rise and Damp where thing
Right.
where he was wandering about with this a bit of wood and stuff like that. Philip was telling him it was a African lovewood and things like that. And,
Chris,
oh,
you have an
memories.
encyclocopedic memory for TV programs
Memories,
and
memories.
movies.
But listen, seeing as how we're not allowed to discuss Scottish politics, can I just possibly say hello to my good friend down in Wales? He's actually standing in the constituency of Denbighshire. My good friend Glenn Swigler. I really hope he gets elected this evening.
Well, Chris, you're allowed to say that because we are not voting in Wales. So, just for a change, you actually made a comment that was completely acceptable, and we haven't had to say it allegedly once this evening, Chris.
Well, I mean that's actually not too bad. And people might not actually know, but I'm actually a paying member of the Plaid Cymru thing. So, you can do that because it's another party outside of the country.
That's an interesting fact. I never knew that, Chris. Well, listen, we've almost run out of time on this rather late-running programme this evening, but I still need to remind you, I'm not sure if we are still running our appeal, but we are, I've just been told, running our crowdfunder appeal. So it's going to go on until we raise the money that we need to continue working all the way through to independence. So if you'd like to help us, you can do that by following the instructions on your screen. You can become a regular supporter of Broadcasting Scotland by just paying £5 a month. You can make an individual donation, or you can volunteer to help us here at the studio. But just remains for me to thank my guest, Chris, this evening for illuminating us with his knowledge of ancient movies. Thanks again, Chris.
No, thanks again, Gordon, and I apologise to the viewers if I was breaking order protocol.
I think you skirted round it, Chris, very skillfully, but let's just throw a discreet veil over that. Anyway, remember everybody to get out and vote, because the polling stations are open until 10 p.m. tonight. That's it from me here at Scotland at 7 this evening. I'll be back again next week, but in the meantime, from Chris and myself, a very good evening to you.
Good night.